All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. Today is Monday, September 13th, 2021. This is a quick morning update on Tropical Storm Nicholas, located in the western Gulf of Mexico. Since we last talked yesterday morning, Tropical Storm Nicholas has intensified and it kind of moved himself a much further northward than we initially had expected. The center of the storm this morning, located here on the southwest side of this big mass of thunderstorms in the Gulf, not far off the coast of Brownsville. Maximum sustained winds currently are about 60 miles an hour this morning with Nicholas, and the system is organizing. However, it is kind of fighting some dry air and wind shear, and there have been some changes to the forecast. So to catch you up, last night, this was the recon data. Again, we had that big, broad, kind of elongated circulation center that had developed yesterday with Nicholas with kind of a not so low central pressure. But then hurricane hunters flew around and you had this big ball of thunderstorms, and they found a new center forming up much closer to the Texas, so the coast of Texas and Mexico, or the border rather, up here. So the system jumped a few dozen miles up from where it was, which is something that we do see sometimes in these weaker, disorganized storms. And that has changed the forecast for Nicholas pretty significantly. This is the new Hurricane Center forecast track. You can see the landfall now expected tonight somewhere near Corpus Christi, whereas yesterday it wasn't expected until, sometime early Tuesday morning. And the whole sort of forecast theory has shifted a little bit with the storm overall. No longer expecting this storm to sit there and stall for days over the East Texas region. Instead, a more steady speed expected through tomorrow and Wednesday as the system drifts through the Gulf Coast region, and expected to be into Louisiana by Wednesday and even Thursday before it dissipates. So heavy rainfall is still definitely forecast, but definitely not looking maybe at the totals we were initially expecting. Tropical storm warnings do still extend all the way from the coast of northern Mexico up through most of Texas, past Houston, and then a tropical storm watch for the very edge of the eastern Texas coastline. And a hurricane watch does remain in effect from Corpus Christi to Sargent, Texas, which is not far from Galveston, about 30-40 miles to the west of Galveston. Nicholas was strengthening pretty good this morning, but it's starting to have some issues. This is the radar data over the last couple hours from Brownsville, from Mark Nissenbaum's side at Florida State, and you can see a really nice core. A partial eye wall even was trying to form a little bit earlier, but it has collapsed in the last couple hours. You can see those thunderstorms here. This is where the center of circulation is, and those thunderstorms being sheared off. It does look like some mid to upper level wind shear is definitely impacting the storm. You can see the massive clouds generally all moving in this direction right here, indicating that Nicholas is struggling with wind shear. It's also struggling with some dry air. Notice how there's almost no rain on the backside of the storm, despite the radar beam kind of coming from this direction. It can't find anything on the backside, indicating that dry air is definitely impacting the storm. It's not super evident on water vapor imagery, but there is some dry air lurking very close, and it's likely some of that is being forced into the storm in the mid to upper levels, and that wind shear is kind of out of the west. You can also see how this side of the storm is very flat, where this side has the cirrus outflow expanding to the south and to the east. So Nicholas is definitely fighting some environmental inhibitors and still has a chance to come ashore as a hurricane, but it's going to be around that threshold of 60 to 75 miles an hour. It's going to be right at the tropical storm category 1 hurricane. So there is still some surge potential for this 3 to 5 feet around Port O'Connor and Corpus Christi region, all the way through Matagorda Bay, and even into parts of Sargent and whatnot. About 3 to 5 feet is a good call. This thing doesn't have a very big wind field yet, so these effects are going to be localized to right where the center comes ashore, but overall not too bad. Hurricane hunters in there this morning finding central pressure around 1,000 millibars in that new center, so it was intensifying last night, but overall still remains somewhat disorganized and disheveled. The strongest flight level winds located here about 55, 65 miles an hour or knots, so that's about 60, 55, 60 or so miles per hour when you convert it down and get it out of knots. Still a pretty good ways away from the actual center. So again, you're talking about a fairly sloppy tropical storm that's going to produce some localized wind and surge effects, but not be the end of the world when it comes to that. The bigger issue again is rainfall totals. The WPC has backed off on their large scale totals a little bit. Last night, Houston, NWS, and WPC were forecasting 15 to 20 inches of rain in some cases for parts, especially around the coast of Texas for Houston and Galveston and areas like that. And that's still, possible in pockets. We're still looking at the potential for rainfall totals around or just north of a foot in some cases over the next 2 or 3 days. However, it looks like some of those really extreme 20 plus inch totals may be coming off the table. But you do notice that this has shifted significantly eastward, and now we're talking about much of South and Central Louisiana getting in on this action too, whereas before most of these heavier totals were just located in Texas, and then there was a quick drop off after Western Louisiana. Now you're seeing totals, approaching, 6 to 8 inches or so, getting all the way into parts of New Orleans. And I think that the trend, with the forecast cone actually moving into Louisiana now, you're going to see these rainfall totals stay high over here, and this is not good news. A lot of these folks were just devastated by Hurricane Ida just over 2 weeks ago. A lot of tarps on roofs and things like that, and now you're going to have several inches of rain. The wind and surge strat is not a problem in Louisiana, but the rainfall totals, as this thing creeps north, you're going to have all that deep moisture coming in off the Gulf, and you're going to see a lot of rain being produced in this region. So the rainfall threat is still very, very important, and the most important issue with this storm. The Weather Prediction Center has went to a high risk tonight, to be expected for rainfall totals just to the south and west of Houston and Galveston, but could be expanded to include them tonight. That is likely where the most excessive flooding will be today. Tomorrow, we still see that moderate risk for much of the Houston Galveston area. It points eastward and into western Louisiana, including cities like Lake Charles. That is a moderate risk. It's not the highest one they issue, but it's still very, very serious and could always be upgraded. And then on Wednesday to Thursday, we see that expanding into eastern Louisiana. Again, some of those folks hardest hit by Ida are going to have to deal with that excessive rainfall on Wednesday. So kind of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, right here for your 3 days on the Weather Prediction Center's outlook, and some localized excessive flash flooding very likely over the next 3 days in this region. So that's the latest on Nicholas. We'll hopefully be back tonight with another video, but it might not be till this evening. So Nicholas probably going to be ashore next time we talk, but we'll go ahead and recap how this thing looked, and we'll look at the rainfall forecast tonight and the rest of your tropics. Thankfully, no other gigantic issues this morning. Real quick, we're still watching this wave near the Bahamas and the Caribbean and whatnot. This is expected to come up and kind of sit off here the coast of North Carolina. Right now, the indications are this probably stays offshore, but a little too early to confidently say that. And then we got a wave off Africa to watch, but it's got a long way to go before it's going to be over in our hair. And there's no other threats. Our little wave here didn't develop, and our wave off the Cabo Verde Islands didn't develop. So we just got 1, 2, and 3 to watch. These two, not a big deal in the short term, and Nicholas, obviously the big player. So that's what I got for you guys this morning. Your tropical update. As always, thanks for watching, and have a good one.